For the rest, they shall represent the other free peoples of the world, elves, dwarves, and men. Legolas shall be for the elves, and Gimli son of Gloin for the dwarves. They are willing to go at least to the passes of the mountains, and maybe beyond. For men you shall have Aragorn, son of Arathorn, for the ring of Isildur concerns him closely. Hey everyone, Yoyston here, and I hope you all are doing well, wherever you are in Middle-earth. So today I wanted to look at the members of the Fellowship again, but through a different lens. It occurred to me a while back while talking to Royan on our Patreon and membership podcast, the Westerness Podcast, that all members of the Fellowship of the Ring came from some sort of nobility or wealth, all except for Samwise Gamgee. I don't believe I ever explored this topic in a video format before, so let's dive in and discuss honestly why this matters and what it reveals about the story, because I believe it to be quite intentional on Tolkien's part. My friends, thank you all for joining me today. Let's begin our tale. So first, let's look at each member of the Fellowship and how they are either wealthy or some sort of noble. So starting with Frodo, he is certainly more wealthy than a noble in the Shire, but Baggins might as well be nobility in the Shire, based on their kind of infamy for going on adventures, Bilbo, doing that and so forth. But again, they're more wealthy than they are royalty, I guess. They have a great deal of gold from the dwarves, both of Erebor and from the chest in the troll caves and the Trollshaws. They're famous, and, to be fair, the Bagginses are related to both Pippin and Merry, somewhat distantly. So, speaking of which, let's talk about Merry. He is actually the son of the Master of Buckland. So, Buckland is the chief hobbit home east of the Brandywine River, and his father is the master of that land. So, again, he's kind of a minor noble in that area. As for Pippin, Pippin, we all like to meme on Pippin because he does do some questionable things during the events of the story. But to be honest, of the hobbits, if we're looking at nobility through a certain lens, he's kind of the most noble of the hobbits in a way, because he is the son of the Thane of the Great Smiles in Tuckborough, which, kind of like Bag End, just had tons of tunnels, and it was kind of the mansion home of the Took family. The Thaneship came along after the end of the kings of Arnor and Arthedain, after they were wiped out by the Witch King and Angmar. The hobbits decided they needed some sort of military leader and the chief of the Shire in absence of the kings, and even when Aragorn returned, I believe they still kept the Thaneship alive. So this title of Thane came about after all of that, and was kind of in place of a king. It wasn't a king, but it was still some sort of chief that, again, had that military control. So if there is royalty in the Shire, and a mansion besides Bag End, the Great Smiles, Pippin is part of all of that. Now next up, we have Gandalf. And, while he's not quite a noble in the same sense of the word, or rich in the same sense of the word, come on. He is one of the Istari, he is a Maya. He's kind of on a level that's beyond what we think of nobility. He has spiritual nobility, and he's known in almost all of the lands in Middle-earth. He's quite famous. And again, not wealthy in the same way as Bilbo might be, perhaps, but had all of the material wealth he would ever need. So, again, Gandalf is certainly up there on this list. Next, we have Aragorn. I won't spend much time there, obvious here. He's the heir of Gondor and Arnor. He's the classic definition of nobility amongst men, but even as one might see, this is how nobility should be. Now let's contrast that to Boromir. He is also a noble. He is the steward's son of Gondor, destined to be the steward of the House of Anarion himself, even under Aragorn, if Boromir would have survived, that is. Now, one might see this as how nobility more actually is. He's placed in this impossible situation where he feels like he has to save his people, and it really, we'll come back to that, because how nobility plays a role in Boromir's story versus someone like Sam's story is really quite interesting. Next up, we've got Gimli, and he actually is distant cousins, many times removed, but still traceable to Thorin Oakenshield. And he is kind of part of the royal family, again, distantly removed, but if the royal family was no more, he would certainly have a claim to the throne of the Longbeards if you trace the lineage back a couple generations. Next up, obviously, we have Legolas, Prince of the Woodland Realm, Thranduil's heir, and one of the highest members of Sindarin royalty. And then we have Samwise Gamgee, The most legendary gardener of Middle-earth. No, but for real, I'm not demeaning this. This is actually something that's super cool. That amidst all of these princes and nobles and great warriors of old, you have this gardener who's there because he cares about the person he works for, his friend, and that he earns a spot amongst these legendary heroes all on his own. Really, why is all of this important? Sam is the most self-made member of the Fellowship purely through his actions during the War of the Ring, right? If you encapsulate maybe their whole lives, you could maybe say that about Aragorn, the most self-made man, something like that. But really, like, by the end of his life, so from the beginning of the Fellowship, the events of the Fellowship of the Ring, all the way to the end of Sam's life, he becomes absolutely both a noble and wealthy, inheriting Bag End, becoming mayor of Mickle Delving in the Shire for 7 consecutive terms. In many ways, Sam is the most humble of the Fellowship, even concerning where he came from. And he earns his nobility, akin to some ways to Gimli with the Glittering Caves earning a higher sense of nobility during his adventures, or Aragorn and his thrones. But his deeds and his humility that he has during such actions truly make him a hobbit of the people who rose up to do greater good. Now, I think Tolkien, through all of this, and again, we have to be careful when we talk about metaphor or any sort of allegory, but Tolkien is providing a slight commentary on how true nobility should be in a fantasy, right? They're kind of the top of their game, best warriors, archers, they're great heroes. They're not just these politicians, these emissaries. They might be those to some degree too, but they earn their place as well through their just raw skill and their talent and all of that. And also, they're fighting for their people in the midst of it. I mean, the war was bad for everyone involved in terms of, like, survivability rates. But if you look at the Fellowship of the Ring, there wasn't a lot of hope that they would all come back alive from that. And you have all of these nobles putting their lives at stake in the quest, in the mission that is the Fellowship of the Ring. And while it is apart from the main aspect of the war, they're not on the front lines necessarily leading the battles at Erebor for Gimli or Mirkwood for Legolas and so forth, you do have this very dangerous task that they all serve as the emissaries, the voices of their people for. So a big takeaway from all of this is that the Fellowship is powerful together, obviously due to their shared friendship, their dire needs to save all of their peoples, and so forth. All of that makes them incredibly strong together. They were already leaders amongst their people, helping them be chosen as emissaries on this quest, having that status where, oh, Legolas, you should serve as the emissary for the elves, and so forth. But that's not what mattered most in the end. And so we come back to Boromir as well. Sam is this most humble and self-made character. He's not worried about where he came from, only what he has to offer. Boromir, part of his flaws, I guess, is that he saw his station. He saw that from his point of view, I am a leader. I am the son of the noble steward, and my people are struggling against this shadow in the east. But they look to me to make things right, to save them, to help them. And so he took his nobility, his status, in, again, a lot more of a realistic way that a human might. And that made him kind of arrogant, that he needed to be the savior, that he needed to be the one to get the ring and bring it back to Gondor and all of that. And so it was kind of his station that corrupted him from a moment there. But it was really, truly when he put that aside and said, no, I have to do what's right, and I have to help these random hobbits from far off, regardless of their political positions or their nobility or whatever. Pippin and Merry, I have to help them because I can, because I'm in a position to do so. And so he gave up that position. He wasn't able to go back home and help lead them as he hoped he would, because he tried to save these 2 hobbits. He gave up the ideal of his position, and that just was such a noble sacrifice on his behalf, more than saving his honor, more than that, right? So it's really an interesting thing, this concept, and maybe there's more to explore here, but I'm curious what you all have to say about this in the comments below. Have you noticed that every member of the Fellowship is some sort of noble or wealthy, except for Sam, but again, he kind of earns that by the end, or is this a new takeaway? What else do you have to add to this conversation? Please let me know in the comments below. From this tale, we see that true nobility comes from our deeds to aid others in this Middle-earth. to share what we can and battle against the darkness wherever we must meet it. Thank you all so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts on all of this below. If you'd like to support the channel, we have a partnership with Mythologie Candles through the link below, and use the code Men of the West for 10% off that first order, or check out CastleCon's Lord of the Rings replicas and use the code WEST at checkout, and please check out our merch. Join our membership and Patreon for access to our Discord server and our monthly podcast. Take a look at Masters of Mythology, which is our second channel on myths and legends. Thanks to our Valar tier patrons and YouTube members, Joby Weasel, Ed Patterson, ComicNut64, Zoomi, Peter Sheppard. Thank you all so much for keeping the channel going. I appreciate it. Don't forget to subscribe to join the Men of the West, and my friends, thank you all for joining me on this adventure. Until the next one.